Cassie always remembered the sound of Marcus's phone ringing more than she remembered the storm. That was the strange part. Not the rain beating against the hospital windows, not the nurses moving fast behind the glass, not even the sight of her 5-year-old daughter lying under a thin blanket with wires taped to her small chest. It was that ringing, again and again and again. Each time it went to voicemail, Cassie looked down at the screen like maybe she had dialed the wrong number, like maybe her husband's name wasn't really sitting there, like maybe the man who promised he would always come running for their little girl had not vanished on the one night she needed him most. It was 1:17 in the morning at Children's of Alabama. Cassie stood under those cold fluorescent lights with wet hair, wet shoes, and Nala's little sweater balled up in her hand. Her daughter was behind the glass, finally stable, but still too quiet for a child who usually asked questions even in her sleep. Cassie called Marcus one last time. No answer. So she waited for the beep and said, very softly, "Marcus, your daughter is in the hospital. I don't know where you are, but I need you to hear me clearly. I will never beg you to choose us again." Then she hung up. And the thing people don't always understand is, she didn't start crying harder after that. She stopped. She just stood there, looking through the glass at her baby. And something in her face changed. Not anger, not shock. Something quieter than that. Something final. Because before Marcus became the man who missed that call, he had once been the man Cassie believed would always answer. And that is the part of the story that still bothers me. Welcome to Mr. Kingswell's Stories, where powerful life lessons come through unforgettable stories about love, betrayal, family, and second chances. If you're new here, subscribe and join us for more stories that make you think differently about life. And before we begin, tell me in the comments what time it is and where you're watching from. People in Birmingham knew Marcus Whitaker before they ever knew what kind of husband he was. That was the thing about men like Marcus. Their names reached rooms before they did. At 7:30 on a Thursday morning, his face was on the cover of Southern Business Review, sitting on the glass coffee table inside the Whitaker Development Group lobby. The headline called him, "The Man Rebuilding Birmingham's Future." Under it, Marcus stood in a navy suit beside a half-finished luxury apartment complex downtown, one hand in his pocket, looking calm in the way powerful men learn to look calm when cameras are around. The real Marcus walked past that magazine without glancing at it. He came through the lobby with his phone pressed to his ear, his jaw tight, his steps measured. His shoes made a clean sound against the marble floor. People straightened when they saw him. The receptionist smiled too quickly. A junior project manager stepped out of his way, like Marcus was weather coming through. "No, I'm not approving that number," Marcus said into the phone. "Tell them if they want Whitaker on the project, they need to come back serious." He paused near the elevator, listening. Then he said, "Lower." I said, "Serious, Paul. Not desperate." The elevator doors opened. 2 employees inside went quiet. Marcus nodded once, polite but distant, and stepped in. That was how people knew him. Controlled, sharp, hard to impress. The son of an old Birmingham construction family who had taken his father's company and turned it into something bigger than anyone expected. Office towers, luxury homes in Mountain Brook, retail centers outside Hoover, charity partnerships that looked good in newspapers, speeches about community investment, a name people respected even when they resented it. By 38, Marcus had learned how to fill a room without raising his voice. He had also learned how to leave one without anyone knowing what he was carrying. That morning, inside the top-floor conference room, he stood at the head of a long table while 12 people waited for him to decide the future of a $60 million development near downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over Birmingham, the city still waking up under a pale gray sky. Coffee cups sat untouched. Laptops glowed. Nobody wanted to be the first person to say the wrong thing. Marcus listened while his chief financial officer talked through projected costs. His eyes stayed on the screen. His mind didn't. For just a second, not long enough for anybody to notice, he saw a different room. White lights, rainwater on the floor, Cassie standing barefoot in wet flats, holding Nala's sweater like it was the only thing keeping her hands from shaking. His phone had been face down that night. That was the part he would come back to later. Again and again. The phone had been face down. "Marcus?" He blinked. Everyone at the table was looking at him. He adjusted his cufflink like nothing had happened. "Run that last number again." The CFO cleared his throat and went back a slide. Marcus nodded, as if he had heard it the first time. Nobody in that room knew that a missed call could sit inside a man for years. Nobody knew that applause could sound empty after your daughter stopped expecting you to show up. Nobody knew that a man could build half a city and still be unable to walk through his own house without feeling like a guest in the life he ruined. Back then, though, before the hospital, before Lena came back, before the silence turned into something permanent, Marcus still believed there were things a man could fix if he had enough money, enough power, enough time. That belief started long before he became CEO. It started with his father. Whitaker men did not fall apart. They adjusted. They recalculated. They found leverage. Marcus grew up in a brick house in Mountain Brook, where the grass was always cut clean and the windows always looked polished from the street. His mother kept fresh flowers in the foyer. His father kept business papers in the dining room. Even family dinner had a certain order to it. Napkins in laps, phones away, shoulders back. Talk about school, business, church, and who had embarrassed the family name that week. Affection existed in that house, but it came dressed as correction. His mother, Vivian Whitaker, hugged him warmly, then brushed lint off his collar. His father, Charles Whitaker, told him he was proud, then asked what he planned to do next. Marcus learned early that love could sound like pressure if you came from people who were afraid softness would make you weak. He was 23 when he first met Cassie, not at a gala, not at some rooftop event with champagne and photographers. It was at a community college fundraiser in Birmingham, held inside a church fellowship hall that smelled like lemon cleaner, fried fish, and peach cobbler. Marcus had only gone because his father told him he needed to show his face around real people if he wanted to understand development beyond blueprints and permits. Charles said it like real people were a category Marcus could study. So Marcus showed up in a borrowed blazer that didn't fit quite right, and shoes that were too nice for a church basement. He stood in line with a paper plate, trying not to look uncomfortable. Then he saw Cassie. She was behind the dessert table, arguing softly with one of her aunties about whether somebody had watered down the sweet tea. "I'm telling you, Aunt Brenda, this is not sweet tea," Cassie said, holding up the plastic pitcher like evidence. "This is tea that met sugar one time at a gas station." The woman beside her sucked her teeth. "Girl, hush. These people don't need diabetes with their dinner." Cassie laughed, and Marcus looked up before he could stop himself. That laugh was the first thing. Not her face, though he noticed that too. Not the warm brown skin or the braids pulled back from her cheeks. Not the small gold hoops or the yellow cardigan that made her look softer than her eyes suggested. It was the laugh. Full, quick, unguarded. Then she caught him staring. Marcus looked down at the peach cobbler tray like it had personally offended him. "You want some?" Cassie asked. He looked back up. Yes, please." "You sure? You looked scared of it." "No, I'm not scared." You paused. "I was deciding." "Over cobbler?" Marcus smiled despite himself. "I take desserts seriously." Cassie studied him for a second. "You one of the Whitakers?" There it was. Usually, people said the name differently once they realized. Softer, more careful, like money might overhear them. But Cassie said it like she was checking a label at Walmart. Marcus nodded. "Marcus." "Cassie," she said, scooping cobbler onto his plate. "And you don't have to look so tense. Nobody's going to ask you to lay concrete tonight." He laughed then, real and surprised. She tilted her head. "See, you can loosen up." "I'm loose." "You are absolutely not." He should have moved on after that. The line behind him was getting longer. Somebody muttered, "Come on now," under their breath. But Marcus stayed half a second too long. Cassie noticed. "You need something else?" she asked. He glanced at the people waiting, then back at her. "Your number." The auntie beside Cassie went still in the way older women did when something got interesting. Cassie blinked once. Then she smiled, slow and amused. "You always this nervous?" Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. "Only around women who look like they can see straight through me." "I can," Cassie said, "but I'm trying to be polite." The auntie made a sound that was almost a cough and almost a laugh. Marcus felt his face get hot. Cassie reached for a napkin, wrote her number on it with a black pen, and slid it across the table with 2 fingers. "Don't call too late," she said. "I work in the morning." "What time is too late?" "For you? Probably 9:30. You look like you need instructions." He took the napkin carefully, like it was something official. And for the first time in a long time, Marcus walked away from a room not thinking about what his father expected, or what the company needed, or how to become the kind of man people respected. He walked away thinking about a woman who had looked directly at him and not seemed impressed. Years later, that detail would hurt him most, because Cassie had never loved the version of Marcus Birmingham admired. She had loved the one who stood in a church fellowship hall with cobbler on a paper plate, nervous enough to forget how to speak. And that man, for a while, had loved her back the best way he knew how. Marcus didn't call Cassie that same night. He stared at the napkin on his kitchen counter for a while after he got home, the number written in slightly slanted handwriting, like she hadn't been trying to make it look neat for him. He almost didn't call at all, not because he wasn't interested, because he wasn't used to being unsure. By the time he dialed the number the next evening, he had already practiced what he was going to say twice in his car outside his townhouse. When Cassie picked up, she didn't say hello right away. She said, "You waited a full day. That was intentional, or you got busy?" Marcus leaned back against his seat. "I didn't want to seem eager, so you chose confusing instead." He smiled. "Is it working?" "Not really," she said. "But I answered, so go ahead." That was how their conversations started. Not smooth, not overly sweet, just honest in a way Marcus wasn't used to. Cassie's life didn't have room for performance. She worked full-time at a small administrative office near downtown Birmingham. Nothing flashy, just steady work with steady pay and a boss who expected her to show up on time and not make mistakes. Her days were structured around things that didn't bend easily: bills, family obligations, church on Sundays, and helping her mother whenever needed. Her world wasn't quiet. It was full. Her cousins came over without calling first. Her aunties argued in the kitchen like it was a sport. Her mother, Denise, believed in speaking things out before they had time to rot inside you. When Marcus came around, he felt it immediately. The noise, the warmth, the lack of space to hide. The first time Cassie invited him over for dinner, he showed up 10 minutes early with a bottle of wine he had Googled beforehand to make sure it looked appropriate. Denise opened the door. She looked him up and down once, not rudely, just thoroughly. "You Marcus?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." She stepped aside. "Come in, and you don't have to ma'am me every 5 seconds. Makes you sound nervous." "I'm not nervous." She said, walking toward the kitchen. "We'll see." Marcus followed her inside, trying not to look out of place. The house smelled like seasoned food, real food, not the kind he grew up with, where everything looked clean, but tasted like nothing. Something was simmering on the stove, something else baking, and somebody in the living room was laughing too loud at something on TV. Cassie came out of the hallway, wiping her hands on a towel. "You made it," she said, like she hadn't been watching the time. "I said I would." She glanced at the wine in his hand. "You didn't have to bring that. I wanted to." Denise took it from him without ceremony. "We'll open it if it's good." Marcus hesitated. "It is." "We'll see," she repeated. Cassie shook her head slightly, amused. "Come on, sit down before she starts interrogating you." "I don't interrogate," Denise called from the kitchen. "I observe." Marcus sat at the small dining table while Cassie disappeared back into the kitchen. He could hear them talking in low voices, not whispering, just sharing. That was new for him. In his house growing up, conversations happened in controlled spaces. There was a right time, a right tone, a right way to say things. Here, everything felt immediate, unfiltered, alive. Cassie came back out with 2 plates. "You eat greens?" she asked. "Yes. Don't lie. My mom will know. I eat greens," he said, more confidently this time. She handed him the plate. "Okay. We'll see." They built something in those kinds of spaces, not grand moments, small ones. Marcus started showing up more often, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to sit on the couch while Cassie finished folding laundry or answering emails. Sometimes they drove around Birmingham at night with no real destination, just talking through things that didn't feel urgent but somehow mattered. One night, they ended up parked outside a closed grocery store, sharing a bag of chips and arguing about cereal prices. "I'm not paying $5 for cereal," Cassie said, shaking her head. "That's disrespectful." "It's not disrespectful," Marcus replied. It's brand quality. It's corn and sugar. It's better corn and sugar. She looked at him like he had just proven her point. You've never struggled over groceries, have you? Marcus paused, not because he wanted to lie, because he didn't know how to answer in a way that didn't sound disconnected. Not like that, he admitted. Cassie nodded once, not judging, just noting it. Okay. Then she reached into the bag and took the last handful of chips without asking. That's disrespectful, he said. She smiled. You'll be all right. Marcus liked that she didn't try to fit into his world right away. She didn't ask about his family's money, didn't pretend to care about things she didn't understand. When he invited her to dinner at his parents' house, she went. But she didn't shrink. The Whitaker home felt controlled, everything in place, everything quiet. Even the air felt measured. Cassie noticed it the moment she stepped inside. This is nice, she said politely. His mother smiled. Thank you. But Cassie didn't linger on compliments. She sat at the table, asked questions, answered directly, and when the green beans came out underseasoned, she ate them without comment. But Marcus noticed the way she reached for the salt without asking. Later in the car, she said, They're nice. They are, Marcus replied. They don't say much. They say enough. Cassie looked out the window for a second. You grew up like that. Like what? Careful. Marcus didn't answer right away. Yeah, he said finally. She nodded slowly. Okay. No judgment. Just understanding. They learned each other that way. Marcus showed her parts of his life that were structured, disciplined, controlled. Cassie showed him parts of hers that were messy, emotional, honest, and somewhere in between, they met, not perfectly, but consistently. Marcus started staying later at Cassie's place, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He found himself relaxing in ways he didn't fully understand, laughing louder, speaking without measuring every word. Cassie didn't rush anything. She didn't ask where things were going too early, didn't push for promises, but she paid attention to how often he showed up, to whether he listened, to whether he followed through. One night, sitting on the steps outside her mother's house, Cassie asked him something simple. Why me? Marcus looked at her. What do you mean? You could be with women who already fit your world, she said. Women your family would pick. Women who don't question everything you say. He leaned back, thinking. Then he said, Because you don't let me pretend. Cassie studied his face for a moment. Then she nodded. Okay, she said quietly. But there was something in the way she said it, like she was filing that answer away, not as a compliment, as a responsibility. Over time, Marcus started bringing work into their conversations. Not intentionally. It just followed him. Problems, deals, pressure. Cassie listened, not like an employee, like someone who cared whether he was okay. You don't have to solve everything the same day, she told him once. I do if it affects people's money. It also affects you, she said. Marcus shrugged. I'll be fine. Cassie didn't argue, but she watched him. And slowly, without saying it out loud, she began to understand something about the man she was falling for. Marcus didn't ignore emotions because he didn't have them. He ignored them because he didn't know what to do with them once they showed up. By the time Marcus realized how much Cassie mattered to him, it didn't feel like a decision. It felt like something that had already happened. Like one day, she was just someone he enjoyed being around. And the next, she was the person he called first. The person he thought about when things went right, and the one he wanted beside him when they didn't. What he didn't fully understand yet was that the same parts of him that made him driven, focused, and admired were the same parts that would one day make Cassie feel alone in a marriage she had built with him. He didn't see it then, because back then, he was still showing up, and Cassie was still believing that he always would. They didn't wait for everything to be perfect before they got married. That wasn't how their relationship worked. Marcus proposed on a Sunday evening at Railroad Park, right before the lights came on across downtown Birmingham. It wasn't dramatic. No crowd, no photographer hiding behind a tree. Just the two of them sitting on the grass, Cassie halfway through a story about her cousin getting into an argument at church when Marcus cut her off mid-sentence. Cassie, she looked at him. What? He didn't say anything right away. That was the first sign something was off. Marcus always had words. What? She asked again, slower this time. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out the ring, and said it too quickly, like if he slowed down he might lose the nerve. "Marry me." Cassie blinked, not because she was shocked, because she was checking if he was serious. "You're not even going to let me finish my story?" she said. Marcus let out a breath, almost laughing. "You can finish it after you say yes." She studied his face, not the ring. "Him, you sure?" she asked quietly. Marcus nodded. "Yeah." Cassie exhaled slowly, like she was settling into something she had already decided a long time ago. "Okay," she said. That was it. No speech, no tears, no moment designed for anyone else to admire. Just a choice. Their first apartment didn't look like the kind of place people expected Marcus Whitaker to live in. The carpet didn't quite match the walls. The air conditioner worked when it wanted to. One of the kitchen drawers stayed halfway open, no matter how many times Marcus tried to fix it. Cassie loved that place, not because it was comfortable, because it was theirs. They argued about small things in that apartment. Dishes left in the sink, laundry sitting too long in the dryer, whether Marcus worked too late or Cassie worried too much. But the arguments didn't last long. Not then. Back then, they still came back to each other easily. Marcus would come home exhausted, loosen his tie, and find Cassie sitting cross-legged on the couch with paperwork spread out around her. "You eat?" she'd ask without looking up. "Not yet." She'd nod toward the kitchen. "There's food. Microwave works better if you hit the button twice." He'd smile, shake his head, and go warm it up. Then sit beside her, eating quietly while she finished whatever she was working on. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't, but it didn't feel empty. It felt settled. The first pregnancy changed something, not in a loud way, in a careful one. Cassie started moving slower, thinking differently, holding her body like it wasn't just hers anymore. Marcus didn't know what to do with that at first. He read articles, asked questions, made sure she had what she needed. He treated it like something that could be managed if he stayed ahead of it. Then they lost it. Early, quiet. The kind of loss that doesn't come with a funeral or a clear place to put your grief. Just a doctor's voice explaining something that didn't feel like it should be explained. Just silence on the drive home. Just Cassie sitting on the edge of the bed later that night, staring at nothing. Marcus sat beside her. He put his arm around her shoulders, said, "We'll try again." Cassie nodded, but she didn't cry right away. She just sat there. And Marcus didn't understand that sitting beside someone in that moment required more than reassurance. It required presence he didn't know how to give. The second time, they were more careful, didn't tell people early, didn't get excited too fast. Cassie kept the ultrasound picture in a drawer instead of on the fridge. Marcus scheduled better doctors, better care, more control. It didn't matter. They lost that one too. This time, Cassie cried, not loudly, just consistently, like something had opened and wouldn't close again. Marcus tried to hold it together. He handled appointments, bills, follow-ups. He made sure everything around the grief stayed organized, but inside it, he kept trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed. One night, Cassie sat on the bathroom floor with her back against the tub, knees pulled to her chest. Marcus stood in the doorway. "You okay?" he asked. Cassie let out a quiet, tired laugh. "Does that feel like the right question right now?" He stepped closer. I don't know what you need." She looked up at him, and for a second, he saw something in her eyes he didn't know how to respond to. "Sit with me," she said. He hesitated, just for a moment. Then he sat, but even then, his body felt tense, like he was waiting for the moment to end instead of settling into it. Cassie leaned her head against his shoulder. Neither of them spoke, but that silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like something neither of them knew how to cross. Time moved, the way it always does. Forward, they kept trying, carefully, quietly. And then Nala came, small, 5 pounds, wrapped tight in a hospital blanket, with a face that made Cassie cry the second she saw her. Marcus stood beside the bed, staring down at his daughter, like he was looking at something fragile enough to break if he blinked too hard. "That's her?" he asked, voice low. Cassie smiled through tears. "That's her." He reached out slowly. Touching Nala's hand with one finger, she curled around it. And something in Marcus shifted, not completely, but enough. He sat down beside Cassie and for once didn't try to say anything that sounded strong or reassuring. He just looked at his daughter and stayed. For a while after that, their home felt different. Full, alive. Nala cried at all hours. Cassie barely slept. The apartment felt smaller than it already was, but it didn't feel broken. Marcus came home earlier when he could. He learned how to hold Nala without looking like he was carrying something delicate and unfamiliar. He even fixed her broken toy piano one night using a screwdriver and a YouTube video, sitting on the floor in his work clothes while Cassie watched from the couch, too tired to laugh but smiling anyway. "See?" he said, pressing a key to make sure it worked. Nala stared at him like he had just performed something magical. Cassie shook her head. "You're gonna make her think you can fix everything." Marcus shrugged. "I can fix most things." Cassie didn't respond, but she looked at him for a second longer than usual, like she was deciding whether to believe that, as the company grew, so did everything else. Bigger projects, longer hours, more responsibility. Marcus didn't notice the shift right away, because from his perspective, he was doing what he had always done. Working, providing, building something that would take care of them. Cassie noticed, not all at once, in pieces. Dinner getting cold before he got home. Phone calls taken during conversations. Promises to be there that turned into apologies later. Next time he'd say, "I'll make it up to you." And for a while, she believed him because the man she married had always shown up eventually. Even if he was late, even if he was tired, even if he didn't always know how to be fully present, he came back. That was enough. At least, it used to be. One night, after putting Nala to sleep, Cassie stood in the kitchen alone, rinsing dishes under warm water. Marcus was in the living room, phone in hand, answering emails. She turned off the faucet, dried her hands slowly, and leaned against the counter. "Marcus," she called. "Yeah?" he replied, not looking up. She waited. He didn't notice. "Marcus." This time, he looked up. "What?" She held his gaze for a second. Then she said, "Nothing." He nodded, like that made sense, and went back to his phone. Cassie stayed where she was, not angry, not upset, just aware, because something had shifted. Not in a way that could be pointed to, but in a way that could be felt, like the beginning of distance. And she didn't know yet that one day that distance would turn into silence, and that silence would be the thing that finally broke them. By the time Lena came back into Marcus's life, the distance between him and Cassie already had a shape. It lived in small moments. Cassie standing in the kitchen with a question she decided not to ask. Marcus answering emails while Nala sat beside him on the rug, holding up a picture she had colored at school. Dinner plates warming twice in the oven. A goodnight kiss given out of habit, not attention. Nothing looked broken from the outside. That was what made it easy to ignore. The Montgomery charity event was on a Friday evening in early spring, held inside a renovated hotel ballroom with gold light fixtures, white tablecloths, and waiters carrying trays of shrimp and tiny biscuits nobody could eat without dropping crumbs. Whitaker Development Group had sponsored one of the housing initiatives connected to the event, so Marcus had to be there, which meant Cassie had to be there too. She stood beside him in a deep green dress, smiling when she was supposed to, shaking hands with donors, board members, and people who said Marcus's name like it belonged on buildings. "You look beautiful," one woman told Cassie, touching her arm lightly. "Thank you," Cassie said. Then the woman turned to Marcus. "You two are just such a lovely couple. Birmingham is lucky to have you." Marcus smiled his public smile. "That's kind of you." Cassie smiled too. She had learned how to do it. Not fake exactly, just practiced. Across the room, a photographer lifted his camera, and Marcus placed his hand on the small of Cassie's back. The gesture looked intimate from the outside, warm, protective, but Cassie felt how light his hand was, like he was touching the idea of her, not her. After the photo, Marcus leaned close and said, "I need to talk to Councilman Reeves for a minute." Cassie nodded. "Okay, you good?" She looked at him. "I'm standing in a room full of people, pretending they like each other. I'll survive." Marcus gave a quick laugh, but his eyes had already moved past her. That was another thing she had started noticing. His body stayed beside her. His attention left first. Cassie took a glass of water from a passing tray and moved toward the edge of the room. near a tall arrangement of white flowers that smelled too sweet. She checked her phone. Denise had texted a picture of Nala asleep on the couch, one sock missing, mouth slightly open. Cassie smiled down at it. Then she looked up and saw Marcus freeze. It lasted less than a second. A person who didn't know him would have missed it. He was standing near the bar, one hand in his pocket, listening to someone speak. Then his gaze shifted toward the entrance, and something in him stopped, not his face. Marcus knew how to control his face, but his shoulders forgot themselves. Cassie followed his line of sight. The woman had just walked in. Cream dress, soft waves brushing her shoulders, gold earrings catching the ballroom light. She moved carefully, like someone who knew people were watching, but didn't want to look like she knew. Cassie didn't know her, but she knew immediately that Marcus did. The woman smiled when she saw him. Not a polite smile, not a networking smile, a remembering smile. Marcus looked away first, then looked back, like he had been caught by something inside himself. Cassie's fingers tightened around her glass. She didn't move. She watched him cross the room, slowly at first. Then, with more purpose, the woman stepped toward him, and for a moment they stood close enough to hug, but didn't. That almost made it worse. The restraint had history in it. Marcus said something Cassie couldn't hear. The woman laughed softly and touched his arm. Not long, just enough. Cassie took a sip of water and felt it go down cold. A few minutes passed before Marcus turned and looked for her. That was when Cassie knew he remembered he had a wife in the room. He lifted his hand slightly, calling her over without really calling. Cassie could have stayed where she was. Part of her wanted to, but she walked toward them anyway, slow enough not to look eager, steady enough not to look hurt. Marcus cleared his throat when she reached them. "Cassie," he said, "this is Lena. Just Lena. No explanation first. No placement. No warning." Lena smiled and extended her hand. "It's so nice to finally meet you." Finally. Cassie caught that word and held it quietly. She shook Lena's hand. "Nice to meet you too." Marcus shifted beside them. "Lena and I knew each other years ago." Cassie looked at him. Years ago. Lena's smile stayed in place. College years. Well, around then. Marcus looked down briefly, almost embarrassed. Cassie noticed that too. "I've heard so much about you," Lena said. Cassie let the sentence sit for half a breath. Then she said, "Funny. I haven't heard much about you at all." Marcus gave a small laugh. Too quick. Too nervous. Lena didn't laugh. For the first time, her smile weakened at the edges. "Well," Lena said, lifting her glass slightly, "I'm sure Marcus has had more important things to talk about." Cassie looked at Marcus. He was watching Lena, not staring, but watching, like he was trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with someone he had kept somewhere private in his mind. Cassie felt something quiet move through her chest. Not jealousy yet, something more humiliating. "Recognition, of course," Cassie said. A man in a gray suit came over then, saving them from whatever would have happened next. He shook Marcus's hand, pulled him into a conversation about permits and zoning, and Marcus stepped away with visible relief. That left Cassie and Lena standing together. For 1 second too long, Lena took a sip of her drink. Cassie adjusted the thin bracelet on her wrist. Neither of them pretended not to know there was something in the air. "So," Lena said carefully, "how long have you and Marcus been married?" "Long enough," Cassie replied. Lena nodded. "He seems happy." Cassie looked at her then, really looked. Lena's face was composed, but there was strain underneath, a carefulness around her mouth, a tiredness near her eyes. She looked beautiful, yes, but not untouched, not careless. Something had happened to her, too. Cassie could see that. That only made things more complicated. "He is blessed," Cassie said. Lena looked at her. Cassie smiled lightly, not sweetly, lightly. Before Lena could answer, Marcus returned. "You ready?" he asked Cassie. It was too soon. They hadn't even eaten. Cassie glanced at him. "Already? I've made the rounds. We can head back." Lena looked between them. "Leaving so soon?" Marcus avoided her eyes for half a second. Long drive. Cassie knew then that he wanted to leave, because he didn't trust himself to stay. That should have comforted her. It didn't. On the way out, Marcus kept one hand on Cassie's back again. This time, his touch felt heavier, guilty, maybe, or nervous. Cassie couldn't tell. They were quiet walking through the hotel lobby. Outside, the air was warm and damp, the kind of Alabama night that made perfume and car exhaust hang low. Marcus handed the valet ticket over and stood beside Cassie under the awning. "You okay?" he asked. Cassie looked ahead at the cars pulling up one by one. "Why wouldn't I be?" He shifted. "I don't know." "You got quiet." "I was listening." "To what?" She turned her head slightly. "You." Marcus frowned. "I didn't say anything." "I know." The valet brought the car before Marcus could answer. The drive back to Birmingham took almost 2 hours, and for most of it, the highway did the talking. Tires on pavement, occasional rain against the windshield. Marcus kept both hands on the wheel. Cassie watched the dark fields and gas stations pass by her window. After 20 minutes, she asked, "Were you in love with her?" Marcus didn't respond right away. That was the answer before the answer. "Cassie." She closed her eyes briefly. "Just answer." He swallowed. "A long time ago." "How long?" "We were young. That's not what I asked." Marcus tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "Yes, I was." Cassie nodded once, not surprised, just confirmed. "Why didn't you ever mention her?" Marcus glanced at her. "Because she was the past." Cassie looked at him then, and tonight, he kept his eyes on the road. "She's still the past," he said, but his voice didn't land cleanly. Cassie turned back toward the window. She didn't argue. She didn't accuse him. She just sat there in the passenger seat, feeling the first real shape of something she could not yet name. Beside her, Marcus drove through the dark, telling himself he had told the truth, and maybe he had, just not all of it. Marcus didn't text Lena first. That was the version he gave himself for almost 2 weeks, and technically, it was true. She texted him the Monday after the Montgomery event, around lunchtime, while he was sitting in his office with a turkey sandwich he had no intention of finishing. It was a simple message. "It was good seeing you. Strange, but good." Marcus stared at it longer than he should have. His office door was half open. Outside, phones rang, printers hummed. People passed by carrying files and coffee, like the whole building depended on motion to stay alive. He picked up his phone, put it down, picked it up again, then typed, "You too. Didn't expect to see you there." He waited. The 3 dots appeared almost immediately. "I almost didn't come." Marcus leaned back in his chair. That sentence did something to him, not because it was dramatic, because it sounded like there was more behind it, and some part of him wanted to be the person she told. He wrote, "I'm glad you did." Then he locked the phone and set it face down. For the rest of the afternoon, he told himself that was nothing. Old friends could exchange messages. Old friends could be polite. Old friends could acknowledge history without stepping into it. By 5 o'clock, he had checked his phone 11 times. At home, Cassie noticed the phone before she noticed anything else. Marcus came in later than usual, not late enough to argue about, but late enough for dinner to be warm instead of hot. Nala was at the kitchen table coloring a worksheet from preschool, her beads clicking softly every time she moved her head. "Daddy," Nala said without looking up, "I made a purple elephant, but Mommy said elephants not purple." Cassie turned from the stove. "I said most elephants aren't purple." Nala frowned. "Mine is." Marcus smiled and kissed the top of her head. "Then yours is." Cassie watched him. He was trying. That was the thing that made it harder sometimes. He did try, in little ways. He kissed Nala. He thanked Cassie for dinner. He asked about her day, even if his attention drifted halfway through the answer. During dinner, his phone lit up beside his plate. Cassie saw the name, Lena. Marcus saw Cassie see it. For 1 second, nobody moved. Nala kept coloring, humming to herself. Marcus reached for the phone and turned it over. Too quick. Cassie took a sip of water. "Business?" she asked. Marcus cleared his throat. "No, just somebody from the event." "Lena," Cassie said. He looked at her. She didn't raise her voice. That almost irritated him more. "Yeah," he said. "Lena, what does she want?" "Nothing. She just sent a message." Cassie set her glass down carefully. "About?" Marcus looked toward Nala. Cassie followed his eyes and understood what he was doing. Not now, not in front of the child. So she smiled faintly and turned back to her plate. "Okay, that was all." but Marcus felt the room change anyway. The messages became part of his day before he admitted they were part of his day. Lena never started heavy. That was what made it easy. She sent a photo of a coffee shop near Montgomery and said it reminded her of a place they used to go. She asked if he still hated cinnamon. She joked about how strange it was seeing him all CEO now, like the old Marcus was hiding under the suit. Marcus responded between meetings, sometimes in elevators, sometimes sitting in his car before going inside the house. He did not delete the messages at first, because deleting would mean there was something to hide. Then one Friday, Cassie picked up his phone from the kitchen counter to move it away from spilled juice, and Marcus almost snapped. "I got it." Cassie froze with the phone in her hand. Nala looked up from her cereal. Marcus softened his voice immediately. I got it." "Thank you." Cassie handed it to him, slowly. Her eyes stayed on his face. He hated that look. Not because it was unfair, because it made him feel seen in a way he wasn't ready for. The first lunch happened on a Tuesday. Lena said she would be in Birmingham for a meeting and asked if he knew a quiet place to eat. Marcus could have sent a recommendation. Instead, he said he had an hour. They met at a restaurant downtown where the tables were spaced far enough apart for private conversations, the kind of place Marcus used for investor lunches. He arrived first and told himself that was because he was punctual, not because he was nervous. Lena walked in wearing a beige coat and carrying herself like she had spent years learning how not to look like she needed anything. "You look tired," she said after they sat down. Marcus laughed under his breath. "Good to see you too. I didn't mean it badly." "I know." She studied him. "Do you?" He looked down at the menu, though he already knew what he was ordering. That was the problem with Lena. She remembered how to reach him before he remembered how to guard himself. They talked about safe things first. Work, Birmingham, her divorce, but only in outline. His company, but not too deeply. Then she said something about how strange life was. How you could wake up one day inside a life everyone else admired and still feel like you had misplaced yourself. Marcus didn't answer right away. His phone buzzed. "Cassie, Nala's school program got moved to next Friday at 10. Please, put it on your calendar. She's excited." Marcus typed back, "Got it," then placed the phone beside his plate. Lena watched him. "Everything okay?" "Yeah. Nala has a school thing." "She your daughter?" Marcus smiled despite himself. "Yeah. How old?" 5. Lena nodded. "That's a good age." "It is. You seem different when you talk about her." Marcus looked up. Lena's voice was soft, but not innocent. He didn't know how to respond, so he drank water instead. He missed the school program, not completely on purpose. That was how he justified it. An Atlanta meeting ran long. A contractor issue blew up. A call with investors got pushed later and later until the morning disappeared. At 10:18, while Marcus sat in a conference room watching a man in a gray suit explain cost overruns, Cassie sent one picture, Nala on a small stage in a yellow dress, standing with other children, mouth open mid-song. Under it, Cassie wrote, "She kept looking for you." Marcus stared at the message until the numbers on the spreadsheet blurred. Then he turned the phone face down, not because he didn't care, because he did, and caring in that moment required him to feel something he couldn't use. When he got home that evening, Nala ran to the door like she always did. "Daddy." "You missed my song." Marcus crouched down. "I know, baby. I'm sorry. I waved at Mommy. I bet you were great." "I was." She said it proudly, then added, "You can come next time." Cassie stood behind her in the hallway, one arm folded across her waist. Marcus looked at her over Nala's head. "I couldn't get out of Atlanta," he said. Cassie nodded. No accusation, no argument, just a small nod that made him feel worse. Nala grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the living room to show him the song. She sang it again in front of the couch, slightly off rhythm, with the seriousness of someone performing for a full theater. Marcus clapped when she finished. Cassie didn't. She turned and walked into the kitchen before the song was over. Later that night, Marcus found her loading the dishwasher. The kitchen smelled faintly like lemon soap and leftover spaghetti. The house was quiet, except for Nala's sound machine upstairs. "I said I was sorry," Marcus said. Cassie kept placing forks into the basket. "I heard you. What do you want me to do?" She closed the dishwasher, but didn't start it. That's the wrong question. Marcus rubbed his forehead. Cassie, come on. I can't control every schedule change. I know, so why are you acting like I chose to miss it? She turned then. Her face was calm, but her eyes weren't. Because lately, Marcus, everything else has a way of becoming unavoidable, but we always seem optional. He looked away. That landed too close. She's 5, Cassie said quietly. She doesn't understand investors. She doesn't understand Atlanta. She understands looking out at the chairs and not seeing you. I'll make it up to her. Cassie breathed out through her nose, almost a laugh, but not quite. You keep saying that, like childhood gives out extensions. Marcus's jaw tightened. Don't start. The words came out sharper than he meant. Cassie went still. He saw it immediately. The small change in her face. The way something pulled back behind her eyes. Cassie. No, she said, reaching for the dish towel. It's fine. It's not fine. You're right. She wiped the counter once, though it was already clean. Then she folded the towel and laid it beside the sink. I'm going to bed. Marcus stood there as she walked past him. He wanted to follow. He wanted to fix it. But his phone buzzed on the counter. He looked down before he could stop himself. Lena, long day? Marcus stared at the message. Upstairs, he heard Cassie's footsteps moving down the hall, then the bedroom door closing softly, not slammed, softly, somehow. That was worse. He picked up the phone. He told himself he only needed 1 minute. Then he typed back, "You have no idea." Marcus told himself he wasn't hiding anything. That was the line he held on to. Because technically, he still came home. He still sat at the dinner table. He still kissed Cassie on the cheek before bed. He still showed up to work, made decisions, signed deals, answered calls. Nothing had collapsed. Nothing obvious, at least. So when Lena called one evening instead of texting, Marcus stepped outside onto the back patio like it was a normal thing to do, like it didn't require distance. The air was thick, the kind of Birmingham heat that stayed even after sunset. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once, then again. Marcus leaned against the railing. Hey, Lena's voice came through soft. Am I catching you at a bad time? He glanced through the glass door. Cassie was inside, helping Nala clean up toys from the living room floor. Cassie said something, and Nala laughed. Marcus turned slightly away. No, I'm good. You sound like you're trying to be quiet. I'm outside. Ah, Lena said. So I did catch you at a bad time. Marcus rubbed his jaw. It's fine. What's going on? There was a pause, not awkward, measured. I didn't really have a reason, Lena said. I don't know. I wanted to hear your voice. Marcus didn't respond right away. He didn't hang up either. You remember that place off 31? She continued. The one with the cheap coffee and those terrible booths? Marcus exhaled softly. Yeah, I drove past it today, she said. It's gone. Something else there now. Things change. Do they? Lena asked quietly. Marcus shifted his weight. Yeah, they do. Inside, Cassie stood up, brushing her hands off on her jeans. She looked toward the door for a second, like she could feel him out there even without seeing him. Marcus turned further away. You okay? Lena asked. Yeah, just thinking. About what? Marcus watched his reflection faintly in the glass. Nothing, he said. Lena didn't push. That was the thing. She didn't force him to explain. She let silence sit. And somehow that made it easier for him to stay. A week later, Marcus transferred the money. He didn't plan it as something big. That was how it happened. Lena mentioned she was trying to get back on her feet. Something about legal fees, starting over, needing a little breathing room. She didn't ask directly, not at first. Marcus offered. I can help, he said over the phone, pacing his office after hours. Lena hesitated just long enough to make it feel like she wasn't expecting it. Marcus, I don't want to put you in a position. You're not, he said quickly. It's not a big deal. How much are we talking? Marcus pulled up his accounts without thinking too hard about it. The number sat there. He adjusted it once, then again, then hit confirm. It's handled, he said. There was a quiet on the other end. Then Lena said, softer than before, You didn't have to do that. I know. Thank you. Marcus leaned back in his chair. For a second, it felt right, like he had fixed something. like he had stepped in where someone else had failed, like he was the version of himself who showed up. That feeling didn't last long. Cassie noticed the account change 3 days later. Not immediately. She wasn't checking for problems. She was paying bills, sitting at the kitchen island with her laptop open, one leg tucked under her, hair pulled back loosely. Nala was upstairs watching something too loud on a tablet. Cassie clicked through the account history, half focused, until the number stopped her. She stared at it, scrolled up, then back down. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad. "Marcus," she called. He was in the living room, laptop open, phone beside him. "Yeah? Come here a second." Something in her voice made him close the laptop. He walked into the kitchen, casual at first. "What's up?" Cassie turned the screen toward him. "Where did this go?" Marcus looked. He knew immediately, but he still said, "What?" Cassie's eyes didn't move. "Don't do that." Marcus leaned against the counter. "It's business. From our personal account?" she asked. He didn't answer. Cassie's chest rose slowly. "Marcus," he exhaled. Lena needed help. The kitchen went quiet, not tense, still. Cassie blinked once, then again. "You took money from our account," she said, her voice low, "to give to another woman. It's not like that. What is it like?" She's starting over. "It was just what?" Cassie asked. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "Just something I could do." Cassie laughed once, short, sharp. "Something you could do." He shifted. "You don't understand what she's dealing with." Cassie stared at him. That was the moment. Not the money, not even Lena. The moment he chose to explain another woman's pain before acknowledging his wife's. "And what exactly do you think I've dealt with?" Cassie asked quietly. Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Cassie nodded slowly. "Right," she said. Marcus stepped forward. "Cassie, it's not like I'm choosing her over you." "You already did," she said. Her voice didn't rise. That made it land harder. "It's not that simple." "It is," she said. "It's actually very simple." She closed the laptop carefully. "You gave something from our life to someone else without even telling me." She continued. "You made that decision alone. I was going to tell you." "When?" Cassie asked. "After she paid you back? After it didn't matter anymore?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Why are you making this bigger than it is?" Cassie looked at him like she didn't recognize the question. "Because it's not small," she said. Nala's footsteps sounded overhead. The floor creaked as she moved from one room to another. Cassie lowered her voice instinctively. "You don't get to decide what hurts me and what doesn't." Marcus looked away. "I was helping someone," he said. Cassie nodded again. "And you didn't think your wife deserved to be part of that decision. It wasn't about that." "What was it about, Marcus?" He didn't answer, because the truth sat there, uncomfortable, unfinished. Cassie stepped back from the counter. Her hands were steady, too steady. "You are chasing something that already ended," she said, "and you're using what we built to do it." Marcus flinched, just slightly. Cassie noticed, but she didn't press further. That was the shift. She didn't push. She didn't argue past that point. She just looked at him, long enough for the silence to say everything else. "I'm going upstairs," she said. Marcus reached out. "Cassie." She stopped, but didn't turn around. "Don't," she said softly. Not angry, tired. He let his hand drop. Cassie walked toward the stairs, her steps even, controlled. Halfway up, Nala appeared at the top, holding a stuffed animal. "Mommy." Cassie smiled immediately. The shift was instant. "I'm coming, baby," she said. She went up, past her, into the hallway. Marcus stood in the kitchen alone, the laptop still closed, the air still. His phone buzzed on the counter. He looked at it. Lena. He didn't pick it up, not right away. For the first time since all of this started, the help he thought he had given didn't feel like something good. It felt like something taken. And upstairs, Cassie closed the bedroom door behind her. Not hard, just enough. But this time, the sound didn't fade. It stayed. For 3 days after the money transfer, Cassie and Marcus moved around each other like people sharing an elevator. Polite, careful, close enough to feel the other person breathing, but not close enough to touch. In the mornings, Cassie packed Nala's lunch in the kitchen, while Marcus stood near the coffee maker, scrolling through emails he wasn't really reading. Nala talked over both of them, asking if butterflies slept, if she could wear her red shoes to school, if Daddy was coming home early. Marcus always answered the easy questions. Maybe, we'll see. I'll try. Cassie answered the ones that mattered. Yes, baby. No, not today. Take your jacket. It's cold in the classroom, even when it's warm outside. There was no argument about Lena. After that night, that was what unsettled Marcus most. He expected anger. He expected tears. He expected Cassie to press him, demand passwords, ask how long they had been talking, whether he had feelings, whether Lena still had that same hold on him. But Cassie didn't ask. She watched him more quietly now, not suspiciously, more like she was collecting facts. On the fourth night, Marcus came home with flowers, white roses wrapped in brown paper from a florist in Homewood. Expensive, tasteful, the kind of apology men bought when they wanted the gesture to say what they were too uncomfortable to say out loud. Cassie was at the dining table, sorting through preschool forms while Nala sat on the floor putting stickers on a coloring book. Marcus stepped inside and held the flowers awkwardly. Nala looked up first. Are those for Mommy? Marcus smiled. Yeah. Nala grinned at Cassie. Daddy got you flowers. Cassie looked at them, then at Marcus. Thank you, she said. She stood, took the flowers, and carried them into the kitchen. Marcus followed, watching as she pulled a vase from under the sink. I know I hurt you, he said quietly. Cassie trimmed the stems with kitchen scissors. Nala can hear you. She's in the dining room. She can still hear. Marcus lowered his voice. Can we talk later? Cassie placed the flowers in water, arranging them with slow, practical movements. Sure, she said, but later came, and they didn't talk. Nala needed a bath. Then she wanted the same bedtime book twice. Then Marcus took a call from a contractor. By the time he came upstairs, Cassie was already lying on her side with the lamp off. He stood in the doorway for a moment. You awake? Yes. He waited. She didn't turn around. Marcus undressed quietly and got into bed. The space between them felt wider than the mattress. The message came on a Saturday afternoon. Cassie wasn't looking for it. That was the part she would remember later, how betrayal didn't always arrive because a person went digging. Sometimes it just lit up in your hand. Marcus had taken Nala to the driveway to teach her how to ride her scooter without scraping her knees every 5 seconds. Cassie was upstairs changing the sheets. Marcus's phone sat on the dresser because he had been charging it. It buzzed once. Then again, Cassie glanced at it without meaning to. The screen lit up. Lena. I keep thinking about last night. I know we said we wouldn't make it heavy, but I don't regret it. Cassie stood still. The fitted sheet slipped from her hand. For a few seconds, she didn't move toward the phone. She didn't need to. The words were there, bright and simple, carrying more than enough. Last night, don't regret it. Her ears started ringing. Downstairs, Nala laughed in the driveway. Marcus said something playful, his voice muffled through the window. Cassie picked up the phone. Her hand was steady, which surprised her. There was no password. Marcus had stopped locking it years ago because trust was easier when nobody had reason to test it. The message thread opened where Lena had left it. Cassie didn't read all of it. She read enough. A dinner, a place outside downtown, an old song playing, Marcus saying he should leave, Lena saying he didn't have to, a pause in the messages. Then, hours later, Marcus, I got home. Lena, are you okay? Marcus, I don't know. Cassie set the phone down on the dresser. Not gently, not hard, just down. She looked at herself in the mirror above the dresser and didn't recognize her own face right away. Nothing dramatic had happened to it. No tears, no open mouth, no shaking chin, just a stillness that felt wrong. The front door opened downstairs. Nala's voice came bright and breathless. Mommy, I didn't fall. Marcus laughed. Tell her you almost did. I did not. Cassie closed her eyes. For 1 second, the sound of them almost broke her. Then she picked up the folded sheet, placed it on the bed, and walked downstairs. Marcus knew before she said anything. He was standing in the hallway, helping Nala take off her helmet. When he saw Cassie at the bottom of the stairs, something in his face emptied. Not guilt exactly. Recognition. Nala ran toward Cassie. Mommy, I went fast. Cassie crouched, touching Nala's cheek. I saw a little from upstairs. You did good. Can I have juice? Give me a minute, baby. Nala skipped toward the kitchen, still talking to herself. Cassie stood. Marcus didn't move. She looked at him for a long moment, then said, "Bedroom." His mouth opened slightly. "Cassie." "Bedroom." She turned and walked back upstairs. Marcus followed. The room still smelled faintly like laundry detergent. The unfinished bed sat between them, one corner bare, one pillow on the floor. Cassie pointed to the dresser. "Your phone." Marcus looked at it, then back at her. His shoulders dropped. "How much did you read?" he asked. Cassie's face changed then, just barely, because even now, his first instinct was not apology. It was damage control. Enough. Marcus rubbed both hands over his face. It wasn't. "Don't insult me." He stopped. The house was quiet, except for Nala, opening cabinets downstairs. Cassie lowered her voice. "Did you sleep with her?" Marcus looked away. That was the answer. Cassie nodded once, like something had been confirmed on paper. "When?" "Cassie." "When?" He swallowed. "Last night." She stared at him. Last night she had fallen asleep waiting for him to come home from what he said was a late dinner with investors. Last night she had left the porch light on. Last night Nala had asked if Daddy was bringing her pancakes in the morning, because he had promised. Cassie turned slightly, pressing her fingers against the edge of the dresser. Marcus stepped forward. It was a mistake. She looked back at him. "No." The word was soft, but immediate. He froze. "No," she repeated. "A mistake is forgetting milk. A mistake is taking the wrong exit. Cassie, I know I messed up." "You planned," she said, voice low. "You lied. You went to her. You stayed. You came home. You slept beside me." Marcus's eyes filled, but Cassie didn't look away. "That is not one mistake," she said. "That is a series of decisions." He sat on the edge of the bed like his knees had given out. "I hate myself for it." Cassie almost laughed, but it came out as air. "That must be hard for you." He flinched. Downstairs, Nala called, "Mommy?" Cassie closed her eyes briefly, then opened them. Marcus whispered, "Please don't do this right now. Not with her here." Cassie looked at him for a long time. That was the worst part. He thought her silence meant she was choosing mercy, but something inside her had already folded shut. She walked to the door and paused with her hand on the frame. "I'm not staying because of you," she said. Marcus looked up, breathing unevenly. Cassie didn't turn around. "I'm staying tonight because my daughter is downstairs asking for juice." Then she left him there with the unmade bed, the phone on the dresser, and the first real understanding that sorry might not be useful anymore. The next morning, Cassie made pancakes, not because she wanted to, because Nala had asked for them before the whole house changed, and 5-year-olds remembered promises better than grown men did. Cassie stood at the stove in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, flipping uneven circles of batter while the kitchen filled with the smell of butter and syrup. Her face looked calm, too calm. She moved like someone doing a task she had done 100 times, except every movement had a small delay in it. Marcus came downstairs slowly. He had not slept much. His eyes were red, his hair uneven from running his hands through it, and he stopped at the bottom step like he wasn't sure whether he still had permission to enter his own kitchen. Nala sat at the table in pajamas, swinging her feet. "Daddy, you said pancakes," she reminded him. Marcus forced a smile. "I did." Cassie slid one onto Nala's plate. No one mentioned the night before. That became the first new rule of the house. There were things set upstairs and things swallowed downstairs. Marcus reached for the coffee pot. Cassie moved out of his way without looking at him. He noticed everything now because she had stopped giving him the comfort of pretending not to. "Cassie," he said quietly. Nala looked up. "Mommy, can I have more syrup?" Cassie picked up the bottle. "A little." Marcus closed his mouth. The morning continued. Plates, forks, Nala humming, the refrigerator kicking on. A family eating breakfast at the same table, performing normal so carefully it almost looked real. Almost. For the next week, Marcus tried to become useful. He came home earlier. He helped with Nala's bath. He took out trash before Cassie asked. He stood in doorways waiting for chances to apologize, but Cassie rarely gave him one. She did not yell. She did not throw him out. She did not call Denise and collapse into her mother's arms. Though she wanted to more than once, she became efficient. That was worse. On Wednesday night, Marcus found her in the laundry room, folding Nala's tiny socks into pairs. "I ended it," he said. Cassie placed 2 pink socks together. "With Lena," he added, because her silence made him feel stupid. She picked up another sock. "Okay, that's all? What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. Something." Cassie looked at him then. The laundry room was small, warm from the dryer, smelling like detergent and clean cotton. Marcus stood too close to the doorway, blocking the only way out without seeming to realize it. Cassie glanced past him. He stepped aside. That small movement embarrassed him. "I said I ended it," he repeated, softer now. Cassie nodded. "You should have ended it before you started it." He looked down. There was nothing to say to that. By Friday evening, the weather had turned ugly. The sky over Birmingham went dark too early, heavy clouds pressing low above the neighborhood. Thunder rolled somewhere far off, while Cassie stood in Nala's bedroom, helping her put on pajamas. Nala was quieter than usual. Cassie noticed before Marcus did. "You okay, baby?" Nala nodded, but her cheeks looked flushed. Cassie touched her forehead. Warm, not terrifying yet, just enough to make her pause. "Marcus," she called. He was in the hallway, phone in hand, reading something. "Yeah?" "She feels hot." He stepped into the room and touched Nala's forehead with the back of his hand. "A little fever?" Cassie was already moving toward the bathroom for the thermometer. Nala whined softly. "I'm cold." Cassie turned back, cold with a fever. Her body knew before her mind organized the fear. "Come here," she said gently, lifting Nala onto her lap. The thermometer beeped. 102.8. Marcus exhaled. "Okay. We'll give her something. We need to watch it." "I know," but his phone buzzed again. Cassie saw his eyes flick down. Not long. Just enough. Her whole body tightened. "Marcus." He looked up quickly. "It's work." She didn't ask. She didn't have the energy to ask anymore. By 9:30, the storm was over the city. Rain hit the windows hard enough to blur the glass. Nala's fever had gone down a little, then climbed again. Cassie sat beside her on the bed, wiping her face with a cool cloth while Marcus stood near the doorway, half present, half elsewhere. "I need to step out for a little while," he said. Cassie looked up slowly. "What?" "There's an issue with the Atlanta deal. Tonight? It's a call. I may need to go meet with somebody." Cassie stared at him. Nala shifted under the blanket, breathing unevenly. "She has a fever," Cassie said. "I know. I won't be long." "You don't know that." Marcus rubbed his forehead. "Cassie, this deal is unstable. If I don't handle it—" "She is unstable," Cassie said, her voice still quiet. He stopped. For a second, guilt crossed his face. Then, the old reflex came back, the one that sorted emergencies by money, responsibility, reputation. "I'll keep my phone on," he said. Cassie looked at him like she was memorizing the moment. "You do that," she said. He hesitated. Then, he left. The front door closed downstairs at 9:47. Cassie heard the car start through the rain. She did not move from Nala's bed. At 11:32, Nala started shaking. At first, Cassie thought she was cold. She pulled the blanket tighter, whispered to her, kissed her forehead. Then Nala's eyes rolled slightly unfocused, and her little body jerked in a way that made Cassie's stomach drop clean through her. "Nala?" No answer. "Nala, baby." The next moments did not feel like moments. They felt like fragments. Cassie grabbing her phone, calling Marcus. No answer. Calling again, while pulling clothes from the chair. No answer. Nala making a sound Cassie had never heard from her before. Rain beating the roof. Cassie's hands shaking so badly, she could barely fasten Nala into the car seat. She called Marcus again from the driveway, straight to voicemail. "Marcus, call me back. Something's wrong with Nala." Her voice broke on Nala's name, and she hated that. She needed to sound calm. Mothers were supposed to sound calm when their children were falling apart. She backed out too fast, corrected the wheel, and drove through streets shining black under the rain. The wipers slapped hard. Her phone sat in the cup holder. She hit Marcus's name again at a red light she barely stopped for. No answer. Children's of Alabama looked too bright when she pulled up. Too awake. Too normal for what was happening inside her car. A nurse saw her struggling before Cassie even reached the door. Then there were hands, questions, a wheelchair she didn't sit in, someone saying febrile seizure, someone else asking how long, how high was the fever. Had this happened before? Cassie answered. She didn't know how, but she answered. One part of her became sharp and useful. She's 5. No known history. Fever started earlier tonight. Medicine around 8. No allergies. The other part kept calling Marcus at 12:06, at 12:19, at 12:41. Each time, nothing. Eventually, Nala was behind glass, small under a hospital blanket. Her braids loosened around her face. The doctor said she was stable. They wanted to monitor her. Cassie nodded like she understood everything, but her eyes stayed on Nala's chest, rising and falling. Her flats were soaked. She had not realized until then. Water had pooled dark around the edges of her shoes. At 1:17 a.m., Cassie called Marcus one last time. The phone rang, once, twice, again. Voicemail. She stood under the fluorescent lights with Nala's little sweater in one hand and the phone pressed to her ear. When the beep came, Cassie did not cry. Her voice was low, flat, from exhaustion. Marcus, your daughter is in the hospital. I don't know where you are. I don't know who you're with, but I need you to understand something. She looked through the glass. Nala shifted slightly in her sleep. I will never beg you to choose us again. She hung up. Then she lowered the phone and stood there, staring at her daughter. For the first time all night, Cassie stopped calling, not because she didn't need him, because she finally understood that needing him had not made him come. By the time morning came, Cassie had already made the decision, not all at once, not in a dramatic moment. It settled into her slowly, somewhere between the nurse adjusting Nala's IV and the first pale light stretching across the hospital floor. It didn't feel like strength. It didn't feel like relief. It felt like something inside her had finally stopped arguing. Nala was asleep when the doctor came back in. She's stable, he said gently. We'll keep her a little longer for observation, but she should be okay. Cassie nodded. Her hand rested lightly over Nala's, thumb brushing the back of it without thinking. Thank you, she said. The doctor gave a small nod and stepped out. Cassie sat there for a few seconds after he left. Then her phone buzzed. Marcus. She looked at his name on the screen, watched it ring, stop, ring again. She let it, not out of revenge, because answering felt like stepping backward into something she had just stepped out of. By the third call, she turned the phone face down. Nala shifted under the blanket. Cassie leaned closer immediately. Hey, baby. Nala's eyes opened slowly. Mommy, I'm here. You didn't leave? Cassie swallowed. No. I'm right here. Nala nodded, her body still heavy with sleep. Okay, that was all she needed. Cassie kissed her forehead and stayed close until her breathing evened out again. Marcus arrived just before noon. Too late for the night, too late for the moment that mattered, but early enough to tell himself he had shown up. He rushed through the hospital entrance, hair uncombed, shirt wrinkled, eyes searching like he could outrun what had already happened. Cassie, he said when he found her. She was standing near the bed, adjusting Nala's blanket. She didn't turn immediately. When she did, her face gave him nothing to hold on to. I just got your message, he said quickly. My phone. She lifted her hand slightly. Not aggressive, just enough. You don't need to explain. Marcus stopped. That wasn't the response he had prepared for. I would never ignore something like that, he said anyway. I didn't see it until this morning. I was... Cassie. He said her name softer that time. She looked at him. I know, she said. And somehow that hurt more than if she had accused him, because she wasn't asking questions anymore. She wasn't trying to understand. She had already decided what his absence meant. Marcus moved toward the bed. Nala stirred again, her eyes opening. Daddy? His chest tightened immediately. Hey, baby girl. He leaned down, pulling her carefully into his arms like he could undo everything with one moment of closeness. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry. Nala leaned into him, too tired to question anything. Cassie watched, still, silent. When Marcus looked back up at her, something in his face cracked. Why didn't you answer when I called back? He asked quietly. Cassie met his eyes. Because I didn't need you to rush in after, she said. I needed you when I called. Marcus swallowed hard. The truth sat there between them. He couldn't argue it. The drive home felt different. Not loud, not tense, just distant. Nala fell asleep in the back seat before they made it onto the highway. The hospital bracelet still rested loosely around her wrist. Cassie drove. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, watching the road without really seeing it. I ended things with Lena, he said finally. Cassie didn't respond. I told her this morning, he continued. It's done. The rain had slowed to a light mist, streaking the windshield in thin lines. Cassie adjusted the wipers. That's good, she said. That was it. No questions, no relief. Marcus turned toward her. Cassie, we need to talk about this. We are talking. No, we're not. Cassie kept her eyes on the road. Because there's nothing left to discuss. That's not true. It is, she said. Marcus's voice tightened. You're shutting me out. Cassie let out a quiet breath. No, she said. I'm finally seeing you clearly. Marcus leaned back in his seat, frustrated. So that's it? One bad night and everything is over? Cassie didn't answer right away. The silence stretched. Then she said, it wasn't one night. Marcus didn't push further. Because he knew that. He just didn't want to say it out loud. Back at the house, everything felt the same, and completely different. Nala went straight to the couch, still tired, curling up under a blanket. Cassie tucked her in, brushing her hair back gently. Rest, she said softly. Nala nodded, already drifting. Marcus stood in the doorway, watching. She asked for you, he said quietly. Cassie didn't look at him. I called you. The words landed again. He stepped forward. I'm here now. Cassie stood, turned. You weren't, she said. Simple, clear. Marcus ran a hand over his face. I can fix this. Cassie didn't react. I know I can, he continued. We've been through worse than this. We need time. Cassie looked at him like she was hearing a stranger explain her own life back to her. No, she said. Marcus frowned. No what? We haven't been through worse, she said. We've been through hard things together. This, you did alone. The distinction hit him harder than anything else she had said. Marcus stepped closer. I was confused. I wasn't thinking straight. You were thinking, Cassie replied. You just weren't thinking about us. He reached for her arm. She didn't pull away, but she didn't lean in either. That small lack of movement felt final. I'll do whatever it takes, he said. Therapy. I'll change my schedule. I'll be here every night. You had chances, Cassie interrupted softly. Marcus stopped. You had chances when I was still asking, she continued. When I was still waiting. When I still believed you would choose us, without being forced to. Her voice didn't rise. That made it harder to argue with. Marcus's eyes filled. I'm choosing you now. Cassie looked at him for a long moment. Then she shook her head. Now doesn't mean the same thing anymore. Marcus felt something inside him drop. What are you saying? Cassie didn't answer immediately. She turned toward the stairs, walked up halfway, then stopped. When she turned back, her face wasn't angry. It was clear. I'm leaving, she said. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. Marcus blinked. What? I'm leaving, she repeated. Not today. Not this second. But I'm done living like this. Marcus stepped forward, panic rising. Cassie, come on. You don't mean that. I do. This is because of last night. Cassie held his gaze. This is because of everything that led to last night. Marcus shook his head. Desperate now. We can fix this. Cassie's expression softened slightly. Not enough. You keep saying that like love is something you repair after it breaks, she said. A pause, then quieter. I don't think you ever realized it's something you protect while you still have it. Marcus didn't move. Couldn't. Cassie turned and went upstairs. This time, when the bedroom door closed, it didn't just stay. It meant something had already ended. Cassie did not pack like a woman trying to make a point. She packed like a mother who had already wasted too much energy, hoping someone else would understand urgency. The bedroom door had only been closed for a few minutes when Marcus came upstairs behind her. He stopped in the doorway and watched as she opened the bottom drawer of the dresser, pulled out Nala's pajamas, and folded them into a small overnight bag. "Cassie," he said. She didn't look up. He stepped into the room. "You said not today." "I said not this second." Marcus stared at the bag like it had betrayed him. "Where are you going?" "My mother's." "For how long?" Cassie opened another drawer. "I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." Marcus let out a breath, sharp and frustrated. "Can we please not do this while Nala is sick?" That made her pause. Not turn, just pause. "She got sick while you were gone," Cassie said. His face tightened. "I know that." "No," she said, folding a tiny t-shirt. "You know it happened." "That's not the same as knowing it." Marcus stood there with his hands at his sides, looking like a man who wanted to argue but couldn't find a place to stand. Downstairs, Nala coughed from the couch. Cassie immediately moved past him. He followed her down the stairs. Quieter now. Nala was half awake under the blanket, cheeks still flushed but better than the night before. Her hospital bracelet looked too big on her wrist. Cassie knelt beside her and touched her forehead. "Mommy," Nala murmured. "Are we going somewhere?" Cassie brushed a braid from her face. "We're going to Grandma's for a little while." Nala blinked slowly. "Daddy coming?" The room held still. Marcus stepped closer. "I'll come see you, baby." Nala accepted that because she was 5 and still believed grown people meant what they said. "Okay," she whispered. Cassie kissed her cheek and stood. Marcus looked at her like he wanted to say something, but Nala was watching now, so he didn't. That was how the end began in front of their daughter. Carefully, quietly, with everyone pretending the suitcases were not saying what nobody could say out loud. Denise opened her front door before Cassie knocked. That was her way. She had already seen the headlights in the driveway, and probably known from the angle of Cassie's shoulders what kind of night it was. Nala slept against Cassie's chest, heavy and warm, while Marcus carried the small overnight bag behind them. He had insisted on driving separately. Cassie had not argued. She didn't have any fight left to give him. Denise looked at Marcus first, not cruelly, but with a kind of stillness that made him straighten. Then she looked at her daughter. "Bring that baby in," Denise said softly. No questions, no performance, just space. Cassie carried Nala down the hallway to the room she had slept in as a girl. The walls were a different color now, and the bedspread was new, but the room still held an old version of her. A younger Cassie who used to lie awake, thinking love would feel safer once she found the right person. She laid Nala down and removed her shoes. Nala stirred. "Grandma's house?" "Yeah, baby." "Okay." Cassie stayed bent over her for a moment longer than necessary. When she came back to the living room, Marcus was standing near the door. Denise had not invited him to sit. That said enough. Marcus looked at Cassie. "Can I talk to you outside?" Denise's eyes moved to Cassie. Cassie nodded once. On the porch, the air smelled like rain-soaked pavement and cut grass. A neighbor's porch light flickered across the street. Somewhere far off, a car alarm chirped. Marcus stood with his hands in his pockets. "I don't want to leave you here like this," he said. Cassie looked toward the driveway. "Then don't think of it as leaving me. What am I supposed to think? That the first left?" His mouth tightened. She saw the word, land. He looked away, toward the street. "I'll call tomorrow." "For Nala," Cassie said. He looked back at her. "For both of you." "No," she said quietly. "For Nala." Marcus's eyes reddened, but he nodded like agreement was the only dignity he had left. When he walked to his car, Cassie stayed on the porch until he pulled away. She didn't cry. Denise opened the door behind her and held out a mug of tea. Cassie took it with both hands. Still no questions. Not yet. Morning came too early in Denise's house. By 7, coffee was already brewing, bacon was popping in a skillet, and low gospel music played from the radio on top of the refrigerator. The normalness of it almost offended Cassie at first. How could a kitchen smell like breakfast after a life had split open? Denise set a plate in front of her. "Eat." "I'm not hungry." "I didn't ask that." Cassie looked at the eggs, then at her mother. Denise sat across from her. "You don't have to talk today." Cassie's throat tightened. That kindness almost broke her faster than questions would have. Nala shuffled in, wearing mismatched socks and dragging her stuffed elephant by one ear. "Grandma, do you have pancakes?" Denise smiled. "I have waffles." Nala considered that like a serious business negotiation. With syrup? With syrup. Okay. Cassie watched her daughter climb into the chair, like this was just a visit. Maybe that was mercy. Maybe that was the part that would hurt later. The first week at Denise's house passed in routines. Medication for Nala's fever, follow-up appointment, clean pajamas, small meals, Cassie sleeping badly in her childhood bed while Nala pressed against her side. Marcus called every evening. Cassie answered when Nala was awake. "Hi, Daddy," Nala would say, holding the phone with both hands. Marcus's voice came through warm and careful. "Hey, baby girl, how you feeling? Grandma made waffles." "Did she?" Mommy said, "I can't have too much syrup." She's probably right. Sometimes Nala handed the phone to Cassie. Cassie kept it brief. "She's better. She took her medicine. She has an appointment Thursday." Marcus always tried to stretch the call. "How are you?" Cassie would glance at Denise's hallway, at the framed family photos, at the small life she had returned to with bags in hand. "I'm fine." He knew she wasn't. She knew he knew. Neither of them corrected the lie. By the third week, Cassie started looking for work, not because Marcus had cut her off. He hadn't. Money was not the immediate problem, and that almost made it stranger. She had access to comfort, to accounts, to a house with rooms she could have gone back to if comfort was enough. But comfort had started to feel like a cage with good lighting. She sat at Denise's dining table one afternoon with her laptop open, and Nala coloring beside her. "What you doing?" Nala asked, looking at jobs. "Why?" Cassie paused. "Because I need something that is mine. Because I forgot what my own life sounded like without your father's name attached to it. Because I am scared if I don't move, I'll go back," she said. "Because Mommy wants to help people." Nala nodded and went back to coloring a purple elephant again. Cassie found the nonprofit posting 2 days later. Community Housing Intake Coordinator, Birmingham-based, modest pay, long hours, work with families facing displacement, rent pressure, emergency housing needs. She read the description twice, then a third time. Denise passed behind her with a laundry basket. "Apply." Cassie looked up. "You don't even know what it is." "I know your face." Cassie almost smiled. Then she uploaded her resume before she could talk herself out of it. The interview was held in a small office off a busy road, near a strip mall with a nail salon, a tax service, and a takeout place that smelled like fried catfish from the parking lot. The woman interviewing her had tired eyes and a kind voice. She asked about organization, communication, crisis management. Cassie answered carefully. Then the woman asked, "Why this kind of work?" Cassie looked down at her hands for a second. Her wedding ring was still there. She hadn't removed it yet. "I know what instability does to a person," she said finally. "Even when the lights are on, even when the house looks nice." The woman didn't interrupt. Cassie looked back up. "And I know people need more than instructions when their life is changing. They need somebody steady." She got the call 2 days later. They wanted her to start Monday. Cassie sat on the edge of the bed after hanging up, phone in her lap, Nala asleep beside her. For the first time since leaving, something moved inside her that was not grief. It was small, unsteady, but real. Downstairs, Denise was washing dishes. Cassie walked into the kitchen and stood there until her mother turned around. "I got the job," Cassie said. Denise dried her hands slowly, then nodded. "Good." Just one word, but her eyes said more. Cassie leaned against the counter, breathing through the sudden pressure in her chest. She had not fixed her life. She had not healed. She had not figured out what came next with Marcus, or the house, or the marriage, or the future Nala still asked about at night. But Monday morning, she would have somewhere to go that belonged to her, and for now, that was enough to keep her standing. Marcus did not tell anyone at work that Cassie had left. Not his assistant, not his father, not the people who sat across from him in conference rooms and trusted him to make decisions worth millions. From the outside, nothing changed. He still wore the same suits, still arrived early, still signed documents with the same steady hand, but small things started slipping. The first time, it was a name. A developer from Huntsville had been working with Whitaker Development for months. Marcus had met him 3 times, shook his hand, looked him in the eye, and still, "Good to see you again, Mr." Marcus paused, searching, The man filled it in, polite. Carter, right. Carter. They moved on, but Marcus noticed. He noticed the way his mind hesitated now, like something inside him was distracted, even when he tried to focus. The second time, it was a meeting. Marcus scheduled it, confirmed it, then missed it completely. His assistant stood in his doorway afterward, careful with her tone. They waited about 20 minutes. Marcus looked up from his laptop. Who? The investors from Mobile. He stared at her, blank. Then it clicked. Right. That meeting. She nodded slowly. Do you want me to reschedule? Marcus closed his laptop. Yeah. Reschedule. She hesitated. Everything okay? I'm fine. The answer came too quickly. She didn't argue, but the look stayed on her face longer than usual before she walked away. At home, the silence had changed. Before, it had been shared. Now, it belonged to him. Marcus walked into the house that evening and didn't turn on the lights right away. He stood just inside the door, keys still in his hand, listening. Nothing. No cartoons in the background. No small footsteps. No Cassie moving between rooms doing 3 things at once. Just the low hum of the refrigerator. He dropped his keys into the bowl by the door. The sound echoed more than it should have. He walked into the living room. Nala's toy piano sat in the corner, one key slightly crooked where he had fixed it months ago. A small stuffed elephant lay on the couch, left behind in a hurry or forgotten in a moment that had already passed. Marcus picked it up, held it for a second, then set it back down exactly where it had been, like moving it would make the absence more real. His phone buzzed. Lena. He looked at the name, didn't answer right away. Then, he did. Hey, he said. You sound tired, Lena replied. Marcus walked into the kitchen, leaning against the counter where Cassie used to stand. Just a long day. How's everything going? He let out a short breath. Depends what you mean by everything. There was a pause. Are you alone? Lena asked. Marcus looked around the empty kitchen. Yeah, another pause. Do you want to come by? She said. Or, I can come to you. Marcus didn't answer immediately. He could picture it. Her sitting across from him, talking, not asking the kinds of questions Cassie asked, not looking at him the way Cassie had started to. He rubbed his face. I don't know if that's a good idea. Why not? Lena asked. Marcus leaned his head back slightly. Because I don't think I know what I'm doing right now. Lena's voice softened. You don't have to know. You just have to stop fighting it. Marcus closed his eyes. That was the difference. Cassie made him face things. Lena let him avoid them. I'll call you later, he said. He hung up before she could respond. The next few weeks blurred into something Marcus couldn't quite control. He tried to stay busy, work longer hours, take on more projects. The office lights stayed on late in his building, long after most employees had gone home. Marcus sat behind his desk staring at spreadsheets, emails, contracts, but his focus kept slipping sideways to the hospital, to Cassie's voice on that voicemail, to Nala asking if he was coming. He told himself thinking about it wouldn't help, so he worked harder. It showed. The Atlanta deal that had pulled him away that night started to unravel. Not completely, but enough. Numbers shifted. Deadlines slipped. One of the investors requested a meeting with his father instead of Marcus. That hadn't happened in years. Marcus sat in the conference room across from his father, Charles Whitaker, who flipped through a report with quiet concentration. You approved this? Charles asked without looking up. Marcus nodded. Yes. Charles turned a page. Without a second review. I didn't think it needed one. Charles finally looked at him, not angry, evaluating. That's not how you used to operate. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Things move faster now. Charles held his gaze. Or, you're moving slower. The words sat between them. Marcus didn't respond. Charles closed the folder. You're distracted. I'm handling it. That's not what I asked. Marcus looked away first. That said enough. Lena didn't disappear. She stayed in the background. Texts, occasional calls, an invitation here and there. Marcus met her twice more, both times in quiet places, both times telling himself it wasn't what it looked like. The second time, they sat across from each other at a restaurant in Vestavia Hills, the kind of place where nobody paid attention as long as you didn't make a scene. You look worse, Lena said gently. Marcus gave a tired smile. Good to know I'm improving. I didn't say that. He shook his head, looking down at his drink. This isn't what I thought it would feel like. What did you think it would feel like? She asked. Marcus took a moment, then said, easier. Lena studied him. That's because you're still holding on to something else. Marcus met her eyes. And what do you think that is? She didn't hesitate. Your wife. Marcus looked away. Ex-wife, he said quietly. Not yet, Lena replied. He didn't correct her, because technically she was right, but the word felt wrong anyway. At Denise's house, Cassie didn't talk about Marcus unless she had to, not because she was pretending everything was fine, because talking about him didn't change anything. Her days had a new rhythm now. Wake up early, get Nala ready, drop her off, go to work. The nonprofit office was small, cluttered, filled with folders, paperwork, and people who didn't have the luxury of pretending problems would fix themselves. Cassie fit there. Not perfectly, but honestly. She listened more than she spoke, asked questions carefully, didn't rush people through their stories. Her co-workers noticed. You don't sound like you're guessing, one of them said one afternoon. Cassie looked up from her notes. I'm not. That was the truth. She knew what instability felt like. She didn't have to imagine it. Marcus called that night while Cassie was helping Nala with a puzzle on the living room floor. Hey, he said. Cassie stood and walked into the hallway, closing the door behind her. What's going on? She asked. There was a pause. Then Marcus said, I miss you. Cassie leaned against the wall, didn't respond right away. I know I messed up, he continued. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. Cassie closed her eyes briefly. The same words, different tone, same distance. Marcus, she said quietly. We've been over this. No, we haven't. Not really. You left. You shut down. You won't even. I stopped waiting, she said. He went quiet. The words landed differently than anything else she had said. I'm not angry anymore, Cassie added. Marcus's breath caught, because anger, at least, meant there was still something alive. What does that mean? He asked. Cassie looked toward the living room, where Nala's laughter drifted faintly through the door. It means I'm not hoping you'll become someone you haven't been. Marcus sat in silence on the other end, because for the first time, he realized she wasn't trying to pull him back. She was already gone. Marcus didn't sleep much after that call, not because Cassie said something new, because she said something final. There was a difference. He lay in his bed staring at the ceiling, the room too quiet, the air too still. His phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark, but his eyes kept drifting toward it, like it might light up with something that could undo what she had just said. I'm not angry anymore. That sentence didn't sound like closure at first. It sounded like relief, like maybe the fight was over, but the more he sat with it, the more it unsettled him, because Cassie had never been the kind of woman who stopped caring before she stopped speaking, and now she had stopped both. The next morning, Marcus showed up at Denise's house unannounced. He didn't plan it. He just got in his car after sitting too long with his own thoughts and drove without checking whether he should. The house looked the same driveway, same porch, same wind chimes that moved softly when the breeze caught them. He sat in the car for a minute before getting out. He didn't knock right away. He could hear voices inside. Nala laughing, Cassie saying something he couldn't make out. For a second, Marcus almost got back in the car. Then he knocked. Denise opened the door. She didn't look surprised. She looked prepared. Morning, Marcus said. Morning, she replied. She didn't step aside. That was new. I came to see Nala, he said. Denise held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Then she stepped back. She's in the living room. Marcus walked in, careful with his steps like the house required permission now. Nala was sitting on the floor with a puzzle spread out in front of her. Cassie sat beside her, helping line up the pieces. Daddy, Nala said, jumping up. Marcus smiled, crouching down as she ran into him. Hey, baby girl. You came early, she said. I wanted to. Nala nodded like that made sense. Cassie stood slowly. She didn't look surprised. She looked like she had expected this eventually. You didn't call, she said. Marcus straightened. I didn't think I needed to. You do, Cassie replied. Not sharp, just clear. Marcus nodded once. Okay. The room held a quiet that didn't belong to the house. It belonged to them. I can take her to the park for a little while, Marcus said. Give you some time. Cassie looked at Nala, then back at Marcus. What time will you bring her back? Marcus hesitated, not because he didn't intend to, because he realized she was asking for a commitment, not a suggestion. 2, he said. Cassie held his eyes for a second, then nodded. Okay. The park was half empty, mid-morning, the kind of quiet that came when most kids were in school and the ones who weren't stayed close to their parents. Nala ran ahead toward the swings, her energy back, her fever gone, her memory already moving past the hospital night in the way children survived things adults carried for years. Push me, she called. Marcus walked over and placed his hands on the chains. He pushed gently at first, then a little higher. Nala laughed. That sound hit him in a way he hadn't expected, because it felt normal, like nothing had changed. But everything had. Higher, she said. Marcus smiled faintly. Not too high. You always say that. Because I'm always right. Nala rolled her eyes in a way she had learned from Cassie. Marcus noticed. He noticed everything now. The small ways Cassie showed up in their daughter, the way Nala spoke, the way she laughed, the way she expected things to be steady. Daddy, Nala said, slowing slightly. Yeah? Why don't you live with us right now? Marcus's hands tightened on the chains. He let the swings slow. Me and Mommy just need some time, he said. Did you do something wrong? The question came soft, careful. Marcus looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, he didn't reach for a quick answer. Yeah, he said quietly. I did. Nala nodded slowly, then asked, Are you gonna fix it? Marcus swallowed. He looked out at the empty park, at the other parents who didn't know him, at the life that still looked intact from a distance. I'm trying, he said. Nala accepted that, because she was still young enough to believe trying meant something would eventually work. Marcus brought her back at 2:03. 3 minutes late. He noticed it as soon as he pulled into the driveway. Cassie opened the door before he reached it. You said 2, she said. I know. Traffic. She didn't interrupt, but she didn't accept it either. Nala ran inside, already talking about the swings, the slide, the dog she saw. Cassie stepped aside to let Marcus in. Thank you for bringing her, she said. Marcus looked at her. Can we talk? Cassie hesitated, then nodded toward the hallway. Not the living room, not the kitchen, somewhere quieter, more contained. They stood facing each other, a few feet apart. Marcus didn't try to close the distance this time. I meant what I said, he began, about trying to be better. Cassie nodded. For Nala, for everything. Cassie studied his face, then shook her head slightly. That's the part you still don't understand. Marcus frowned. Then help me understand. Cassie took a breath, not to calm down, to choose her words carefully. You don't get to rebuild this the way you want to, she said. You don't get to decide when it's time to fix things just because you're ready now. Marcus felt that he just didn't want to accept it. So what does that mean? He asked. Cassie's voice stayed steady. It means I'm not waiting for you to become the version of yourself you should have been when it mattered. Marcus's chest tightened. And if I become that person now? He asked. Cassie looked at him for a long moment. Then she said something that settled everything. Then you'll be a better man, she said. Just not my husband. The words didn't hit all at once. They settled, heavy, unavoidable. Marcus didn't argue, didn't try to convince her, because for the first time, he understood something clearly. This wasn't a conversation about forgiveness. It was a conversation about consequence. Cassie wasn't holding on to anger. She was letting go of expectation, and there was nothing he could offer that would pull her back into waiting. Nala's laughter drifted down the hallway. Cassie turned toward it instinctively. Marcus watched her go, and for the first time, he didn't feel like he was losing her. He felt like he already had. A year passed, and Cassie stopped counting it by what Marcus missed. That came slowly. At first, everything had been measured against him. The first week he didn't sleep in the same house. The first month Nala stopped asking if Daddy was coming home. The first holiday where Cassie had to decide which traditions to keep and which ones hurt too much to touch. But after a while the calendar changed. It became work deadlines, school projects, doctor appointments, grocery runs, staff meetings, Sunday dinner at Denise's house. Small things, ordinary things, the kind of things that made a life feel real again. Cassie still lived with Denise when the year turned, but she no longer moved through the house like a guest carrying grief in a suitcase. Her clothes had a place in the closet. Nala's drawings covered the refrigerator. There was a small basket by the door for school shoes, library books, and whatever Nala decided was important enough to bring home in her backpack. Denise never rushed them out. She also never let Cassie disappear into comfort. One Saturday morning, while Cassie stood in the kitchen slicing oranges for Nala's lunch, Denise set a stack of apartment listings beside her. Cassie glanced down. "What's this?" Denise poured coffee, like she hadn't just dropped a whole decision on the counter. "Places. I can see that. You been looking?" Cassie reached for another orange. "A little." Denise gave her a look. Cassie sighed. "Not really. I'm not trying to stay here forever. I didn't say you were. You kind of did with the paper." Denise leaned against the counter. "Baby, this house is yours whenever you need it. But needing rest and hiding in rest are not the same thing." Cassie stopped cutting. The knife rested against the orange peel. Denise softened her voice. "You got steady again. Now don't be scared to stand on your own." Cassie looked toward the living room, where Nala was sitting on the rug watching cartoons with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "I'm not scared," Cassie said. Denise didn't respond. That was how Cassie knew she didn't believe her. Work had become the first place Cassie felt herself returning. The nonprofit office was still cramped, still understaffed, still full of people asking for more than the system could easily give. The copier jammed every Thursday like it had a personal grudge. The break room refrigerator smelled faintly like old takeout, no matter how often someone cleaned it. But Cassie liked the truth of the place. Nobody there cared what kind of car she used to ride in. Nobody cared whose last name she had. They cared whether she returned calls, whether she helped people fill out forms correctly, whether she could sit across from a woman with 2 kids and an eviction notice and not treat her like a problem to process. Cassie was good at that. Better than she expected. One afternoon, her supervisor asked her to sit in on a meeting with city partners about emergency housing placement. Cassie wore a simple blouse, took notes, and planned to stay quiet. But halfway through, one of the men at the table said, "The issue is these families don't follow through once resources are offered." Cassie looked up. The room kept moving for a second, papers shifting, someone clicking a pen. Then Cassie said, "Sometimes people don't follow through because the instructions are written for people who aren't already drowning." The table went quiet. Her supervisor looked at her, not warning her to stop, just waiting. The man frowned. "Meaning?" "Meaning if a mother is working 2 jobs, taking buses, trying to keep her kids fed, and you give her a packet with 7 offices to call between 9 and 4, that's not access. That's a test." Nobody spoke right away. Cassie felt her heart beating, but she didn't take it back. She had spent too many years softening true things so they wouldn't make other people uncomfortable. After the meeting, her supervisor caught up with her in the hallway. "You ever think about leadership?" Cassie laughed once, uncomfortable. "I just started here." "That's not what I asked." Cassie didn't answer, but the question followed her home. Marcus remained in the edges of their life. Scheduled calls, visits with Nala, school events when he made them, missed events when work became the excuse again. The difference was, Cassie no longer rearranged her heart around his inconsistency. If he came, Nala saw him. If he didn't, Cassie absorbed the disappointment quietly and kept the evening moving. That was the part Marcus didn't see, the cleanup, the small emotional housekeeping that came after a child stopped looking out the window. One Friday, Nala sat at the kitchen table in Denise's house, wearing her pajamas, her hair half braided. "Daddy said, maybe tomorrow," she said. Cassie's fingers paused in the section of hair she was parting. "Maybe," Cassie repeated gently. "Is maybe yes or no?" Cassie looked at her daughter's face in the reflection of the dark kitchen window. 5 had become 6 somewhere in the middle of all this. Nala's cheeks were still round, but her questions were getting sharper. "Maybe means we don't know yet," Cassie said. Nala thought about that. "I don't like maybe." Cassie resumed braiding. "Me either, baby." She wanted to say more, that she was sorry, that adults made promises they were too weak or too distracted to keep, that love sometimes came from people who did not know how to be steady. But Nala was 6, so Cassie tied the braid with a purple band and kissed the top of her head. 2 months later, Cassie applied for the leadership role. She almost talked herself out of it 3 times. The job was bigger: regional housing initiative, more responsibility, more public speaking, more rooms where she would be expected to defend ideas in front of people who had never stood in line at a county assistant's office or waited on hold with a landlord while a child cried in the next room. Tasha, one of the women from work who had become something close to a friend, caught Cassie staring at the application during lunch. "You gonna submit it or marry it?" Tasha asked. Cassie looked up. "I'm thinking." "You've been thinking for 20 minutes. It's a big step." Tasha opened her yogurt. So was leaving that big house. Cassie's face shifted. Tasha softened. "Too much?" "No," Cassie said after a moment. "Just true." "Then, act like it." That night, after Nala fell asleep, Cassie sat on Denise's porch with her laptop balanced on her knees. The neighborhood was quiet except for crickets and the distant sound of traffic. She read her cover letter one last time, then hit submit before fear could make a better argument. The interview happened on a rainy Tuesday morning. Cassie sat in a conference room downtown, hands folded on the table, wedding ring finally absent from her finger. She had removed it months earlier and placed it in a small box in Denise's closet. Not thrown away, not sold, just removed. A woman across the table asked, "What drives your work?" Cassie looked at the rain streaking the window. Then, back at the panel. "I know what it feels like when the place you live stops feeling safe," she said. "And I know stability is not just about walls or rent. It's about whether a person can breathe inside their own life." No one interrupted, so she kept going. "I want to help build systems that don't ask people to be perfect before they deserve help." The room stayed quiet for a beat, not because she had performed well, because she had told the truth plainly. She got the call the following Thursday. Cassie was in the grocery store, standing in the cereal aisle with Nala, arguing gently over a box with too much sugar. Her phone rang. She answered, while Nala hugged the cereal to her chest like evidence. "Yes, this is Cassie." She listened. Her eyes changed first. Then her hand came up to cover her mouth. Nala frowned. "Mommy." Cassie looked down at her daughter. A laugh came out of her before she could stop it. Small, disbelieving. "I got it," she whispered. Nala blinked. "Got what?" Cassie crouched right there between the cereal shelves and pulled her close. "Something good," she said. Nala hugged her back, confused, but happy enough to accept it. Across the aisle, an older woman smiled and kept walking. Cassie stayed there for a second longer, not because everything was healed, not because the past had stopped hurting, but because, for once, the future had opened without asking Marcus for permission. Marcus found out about Cassie's new position from an article someone else sent him. That bothered him more than he wanted to admit. He was sitting in his office late on a Wednesday afternoon, half listening to a voicemail from an investor, when his father forwarded him a local business feature with no comment attached. The headline sat on his screen: "Birmingham housing advocate Cassie Whitaker steps into regional leadership role." Marcus stared at her name. Whitaker. She had kept it, not because she belonged to him anymore. He knew that. Maybe it was easier for paperwork, easier for Nala, easier because changing a name required emotional energy she had already spent elsewhere. But seeing it there still did something to him. He clicked the article. There was a photo of Cassie standing outside a community housing office, wearing a simple cream blouse and dark slacks, her hair pulled back, one hand resting lightly on a folder. She wasn't smiling big, just enough, confident, present, not posed like the wives in charity magazines, not decorated, just there. Marcus read the article once, then again. The quotes sounded like her, plain, careful, honest. He could hear her voice in them, and that was what made him lean back in his chair and close his eyes. For years, he had thought of Cassie as part of his life. His wife, Nala's mother, the woman who remembered appointments, softened rooms, kept things moving behind him. He had not understood how much of herself she had been holding back just to keep their life standing. Now the world was seeing the part of her he had mistaken for support. Strength. His office door opened slightly. Charles stepped in without knocking, as he always had. "You saw it," Charles said. Marcus minimized the article too late. "Yes." Charles walked in, closing the door behind him. She's doing well. Marcus nodded, jaw tight. Looks like it. That bothers you? Marcus looked up. Why would it bother me? His father didn't answer quickly. He crossed to the window and looked out over the city. You tell me. Marcus turned back to his screen. I'm glad she's doing well. That's not what I asked. Marcus let out a tired breath. What do you want me to say? Charles looked at him then. For once, there was less command in his face. More age. I want you to stop acting like this is something happening to you. Marcus said nothing. Charles tapped the back of a chair once with his fingers. Your mother wants to speak to Cassie. Marcus looked up sharply. Why? Because she says there are things she should have said a long time ago. Marcus gave a short laugh with no humor. Now everybody wants to talk. Charles's face hardened slightly. Watch your tone. Marcus looked away. For a moment, the office felt like the dining room from his childhood. His father standing. Marcus corrected. Emotions pressed down until they came out as irritation instead of truth. Charles softened first. You lost a good woman, he said. Marcus's throat tightened. I know. No. Charles said, I think you know you miss her. That's not the same. Marcus looked at him then, but Charles had already turned toward the door. Vivian Whitaker texted Cassie 2 days later. Cassie was at her desk when the message came through. She had been reviewing a placement report, red pen in hand, coffee gone cold beside her. Cassie, I would like to see you if you are open to it. No apology in the text. No explanation, just the opening of a door Cassie had not touched in over a year. She stared at it for a long time, then locked her phone. She went back to the report, made 3 notes, answered 2 emails, and took a call from a caseworker before looking at the message again. Her first instinct was no, not because she hated Vivian. Hate required energy, but because some conversations came too late and expected too much. That evening, after Nala was asleep, Cassie sat at Denise's kitchen table with the phone between them. Denise read the message and slid the phone back. You going? I don't know. You want to? Cassie looked toward the hallway. I don't know if want is the word. Denise nodded. Need? Cassie sat with that. Maybe not for Marcus, not for Vivian, for the younger version of herself who had sat through Whitaker dinners feeling examined and still smiled because she loved Marcus enough to endure discomfort quietly. Cassie picked up the phone. I'm available Saturday morning. The reply came 20 minutes later. Thank you. Homewood Cafe at 10? Cassie stared at the word, thank you, then answered, that works. Vivian was already there when Cassie arrived. That surprised her. In the past, Vivian had always made entrances, not rudely, just naturally. People noticed when she came into rooms. This time, she sat at a small table near the window, hands folded around a cup of tea. She looked smaller than Cassie remembered. Still elegant, still composed, but less certain. Cassie, Vivian said, standing. Mrs. Whitaker. Vivian's face shifted at the formality, but she accepted it. They sat. A server came by. Cassie ordered tea because coffee felt too sharp for what this was. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, people walked past with shopping bags and strollers. Inside, plates clinked softly. A couple near the back argued in whispers over a bill. Vivian looked at Cassie with an expression Cassie had rarely seen from her. Regret, maybe. I owe you an apology, Vivian said. Cassie folded her hands in her lap. Vivian continued, slowly. I didn't make things easy for you when you married Marcus. I thought I was protecting him. Protecting the family. Protecting a name that honestly has caused more loneliness than pride some days. Cassie listened. No rescue. No softening. Vivian swallowed. You loved him before all of this became what it is. Before the covers and speeches and praise, and I treated you like someone he had brought into the family, instead of someone who helped him become a man. Cassie looked down at her tea. Steam curled upward and disappeared. I didn't do it for recognition, she said. I know, Vivian replied. That's part of why I'm ashamed. Cassie looked at her then. There it was. Not performance, not class manners. A mother finally saying something without decorating it. Vivian took a breath. I also came because Marcus is not well. Cassie's expression did not change, but something in her body braced. He's functioning, Vivian said. Working. Showing up where he has to. but he is not himself. Cassie held her gaze. I'm sorry to hear that. Vivian nodded. Are you? The question wasn't cruel. It was honest. Cassie considered lying, then didn't. I don't wish him harm, she said. He is Nala's father. That will always matter. Vivian looked down. But that doesn't change my decision, Cassie added. Vivian's eyes lifted again. For a second, the request sat between them before she made it. Is there any chance you would consider giving him another chance? Cassie didn't answer immediately. She picked up her tea, set it back down without drinking. No, she said, not loud, not emotional. Certain. Vivian closed her eyes briefly, like she had expected it, and still felt the weight. I thought so. Then why ask? Vivian opened her eyes. Because he doesn't understand it yet. And I needed to hear it from you before I stopped letting him hope in my house. Cassie sat back slightly. That answer surprised her. Vivian reached for her purse, then paused. For what it's worth, she said, I am sorry, not because it fixes anything. It doesn't, but because you deserved better from all of us. Cassie looked out the window for a moment, then back at her. Thank you. It was not forgiveness. Not exactly, but it was enough for the table they were sitting at. Marcus was waiting at Vivian's house when she returned. He stood from the couch as soon as she came in. Well? He asked. Vivian set her purse down carefully. Her face told him before her mouth did. She's not coming back, she said. Marcus stared at her. You asked her like that? I asked her plainly. And she just said no? Vivian looked at him with tired eyes. Yes, Marcus. She said no. He paced once across the living room. She's hurt. That doesn't mean... That is exactly what it means, Vivian interrupted. Marcus stopped. His mother rarely interrupted him. She built a life without you, Vivian said. You need to stop treating that like a temporary condition. Marcus's face tightened. You don't know what we had. No, Vivian said quietly. But I know what you lost. Marcus looked away. His mother stepped closer. You keep waiting for regret to become a bridge, she said. It won't. Marcus stood there, breathing hard through his nose. Anger and grief tangled so tightly he couldn't tell which was which. For the first time, no one in his family gave him a solution. No strategy, no leverage, no way back, just the truth. And across town, Cassie walked out of the cafe into the mild Saturday air feeling something close. Not to happiness, not even peace, but release. One more room she no longer had to stand in. Nala turned 10 on a Saturday that didn't feel like it needed to prove anything. Cassie kept it simple, not small, just intentional. String lights stretched across the backyard, clipped carefully between the fence and the edge of the porch. A folding table held cupcakes instead of a big layered cake, each one decorated slightly differently because Cassie and Nala had made them together the night before. There was a speaker playing music low enough for people to talk over without raising their voices. Denise moved between guests with easy familiarity, checking on food, refilling drinks, making sure nobody stood alone too long. A few of Cassie's coworkers came by, along with 2 of Nala's school friends and their parents. It wasn't a crowd. It didn't need to be. It felt full anyway. Cassie stood near the porch steps, watching Nala move through the yard with a kind of confidence that didn't ask permission anymore. She laughed easily, pulled her friends toward games, explained rules no one had asked for, corrected them when they got it wrong. Cassie smiled slightly, not because everything had been perfect, because Nala had still grown into something steady anyway. Marcus arrived 10 minutes early. That was new. He parked on the street instead of the driveway, like he didn't want to take up space he hadn't earned. He sat in the car for a second, hands resting on the steering wheel, watching the yard through the windshield. He could see Cassie, could see Nala, could see Denise. It looked like a complete picture. He stepped out of the car. Nala saw him first. Daddy, she yelled, breaking into a run before he reached the gate. Marcus crouched instinctively as she ran into him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. Hey, birthday girl, he said, smiling. You're early, she said. I know. She nodded like that mattered. Because it did. Marcus followed her into the yard. People glanced at him briefly, some recognizing him, most not caring enough to hold the look. He wasn't the center here. That was also new. Cassie noticed him as he approached. Their eyes met for a second. She gave a small nod. He returned it. No tension, no pull, just acknowledgement. "Hey," Marcus said when he got close. "Hey," Cassie replied. "You need help with anything?" Cassie glanced at the table, then back at him. "No, we're good." Marcus nodded. He stood there for a second longer than necessary, like he was waiting for something else to happen. It didn't, so he stepped back, found a place near the edge of the yard, stayed there. At one point, Nala dragged both of them toward the table. "Look at the cupcakes," she said, holding up one with uneven frosting. Marcus leaned in. "You made these?" "Me and Mommy. They look good." "They taste better," Nala corrected. Cassie almost smiled. For a second, standing there beside each other, it looked like something familiar. Not the past, just a version of what people might assume if they didn't look closely. But Cassie didn't lean toward him. Marcus didn't reach for her. The space between them stayed honest. Nala didn't notice. Or maybe she did. And this was just her normal now. As the afternoon moved on, people started leaving in small waves. Hugs. "Tell her happy birthday again. Text me when you get home." The music softened. The sky shifted toward evening. Marcus stayed, not because anyone asked him to, because he didn't want to leave too early and make it look like he wasn't trying. That instinct still lived in him. Cassie stood near the porch, gathering empty cups into a trash bag. Marcus approached slowly. "You did a good job," he said, nodding toward the yard. "Thank you." "She's happy." Cassie tied off the bag. "She is." Marcus watched her for a second, then said, "That's because of you." Cassie didn't respond immediately. She picked up another cup, dropped it in the bag. "She deserves it," she said. Marcus nodded. That answer didn't include him. He felt that they stood there in the quiet that followed, not uncomfortable, just stripped of everything that used to fill it. Marcus looked at her, really looked. There were lines at the edges of her eyes now that hadn't been there before, not from stress alone, from years, from choices, from becoming someone who no longer bent to keep things from breaking. "I used to think," he started, then stopped. Cassie glanced at him. "What?" Marcus let out a slow breath. "I used to think success meant building something big, something people could see." Cassie leaned lightly against the porch railing. "And now?" Marcus looked out at the yard, where Nala was chasing one of her friends. "Now, I think it's something you protect while you still have it." Cassie didn't respond, not because she disagreed, because she had already learned that lesson in a different way. "I'm not saying this to change anything," Marcus added quickly. "I know I can't." Cassie nodded once. "Then why say it?" Marcus swallowed. "Because I finally understand it," he said. "And I think I needed you to know that." Cassie studied him for a moment. Then she spoke. "You understanding it now doesn't change what I had to go through when you didn't." Marcus nodded immediately. "I know, and it doesn't give us a second chance." "I know." There was no argument, no attempt to persuade, just agreement. That was the difference now. Nala ran back toward them, slightly out of breath. "Family picture," she announced, holding up her mother's phone. Cassie hesitated for half a second, then nodded. "Okay." Marcus stepped closer. Not too close, just enough. They stood side by side as Nala set the timer and ran back between them. "Smile," she said. Cassie smiled. Marcus smiled. The camera clicked, captured something that didn't try to lie. Not a perfect family, not a broken one, just a real one. Later that night, after the last guest left and the yard was quiet again, Cassie sat on the porch steps. The string lights were still on, casting a soft glow over the empty chairs and scattered wrappers. Inside, Nala slept, worn out from the day. Denise moved around the kitchen, cleaning up in her steady way. Cassie leaned back slightly, letting the quiet settle around her. Years ago, she had sat in a different house, waiting for Marcus to come home, waiting for conversations, waiting for change, waiting for something that never arrived when it mattered. She wasn't that woman anymore, not because she had hardened, because she had stopped waiting. Across the city, Marcus sat in his living room. The house was still large, still polished, still impressive in the ways that mattered to people who only saw surfaces, but it didn't feel full, not anymore. He held the photo from earlier in his phone. Him, Cassie, Nala between them, all smiling. He stared at it longer than he meant to, not imagining how to get it back. just recognizing it for what it was, a moment, not a door. He set the phone down. For the first time, he didn't feel the urge to fix anything, because there was nothing left to fix, only something left to understand. Cassie stood from the porch and turned off the lights one by one. The yard fell into darkness slowly. Inside, she checked on Nala one more time, adjusting the blanket, brushing a curl away from her face. "Happy birthday, baby," she whispered. Nala shifted in her sleep. Peaceful, safe, loved, everything Cassie had fought to protect. Cassie stood there for a moment, then walked out of the room, closing the door halfway. Her life was not built on what she lost anymore. It was built on what she chose. And somewhere across the city, Marcus finally sat still long enough to understand something that didn't come with a solution. Choosing too late was still losing. If this story stayed with you for even a moment, then you already understand the part nobody says out loud. Sometimes it's not the betrayal that breaks something. It's the realization that you kept choosing someone who stopped choosing you a long time ago. And by the time they finally understand your worth, you've already learned how to live without them. So I want to ask you something real. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you still loved? Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally chose yourself? Tell me in the comments. I read them all. And if this story made you think differently about love, timing, or what it really means to show up for someone, subscribe to Mr. Kingswell Stories, because some lessons don't come from advice. They come from stories like this one.